Imagine being just 14 years old and facing unimaginable cruelty. A young girl was subjected to repeated abuse by a large group of boys. She was overpowered, left unconscious, threatened, and manipulated into silence. Instead of receiving protection, she was blamed. Her innocence was taken from her, and her voice was ignored while society looked on. This is not fiction. This is a real and deeply disturbing case involving a teenage victim whose suffering exposed serious failures in the system. The story begins in the city of Ulsan, where the girl lived with her family under difficult circumstances. She was a middle school student, known to some by her surname. At home, she had a younger brother and sister, and the family struggled financially. Her father struggled with alcoholism and had a violent temper. Domestic abuse was a constant presence in the household, with her mother often being the target. Eventually, unable to endure the situation any longer, her mother left the family after a divorce in early 2003. After her mother's departure, the situation worsened. The father's anger shifted toward his eldest daughter. Verbal insults and physical violence became a daily occurrence. Living in fear, the young girl found herself trapped in an environment that felt more like a nightmare than a home. She had no one she could open up to. All her pain stayed buried inside as she endured everything in silence. But one question lingered: would her suffering ever come to an end, or was something even worse waiting ahead? In January 2004, her life took an unexpected turn. While using an online chat room, she began speaking with an 18-year-old student named Park. He appeared kind and understanding, slowly gaining her trust through gentle and persuasive words. Eventually, he convinced her to visit Miryang, a town located about an hour away from Ulsan. Exhausted by the hardships at home and curious about him, she decided to meet him, believing she had found someone she could trust. She had no idea that this decision would change her life forever. Park was not who he seemed. He was involved with a local gang known for targeting other students and taking their belongings. When she arrived, he led her to an isolated place and suddenly attacked her, striking her and leaving her unconscious. But this was only the beginning. Park was not alone. He was joined by several other gang members, turning the situation into something far more terrifying than she could have ever imagined. She was taken, still unconscious, to a nearby motel where the situation escalated into prolonged abuse. Multiple individuals harmed her, causing severe physical and emotional trauma. The injuries she suffered later required long-term medical care. The attackers recorded what happened and used those recordings as a tool to threaten her, warning that they would release the footage if she spoke out. Overwhelmed by fear and shame, she remained silent. Tragically, this was not an isolated incident. It continued over time. Others were also involved in enabling and spreading what happened, including individuals who helped record and share the material online. The situation worsened when she was pressured into bringing people close to her into the same dangerous environment, putting them at risk as well. They, too, faced harm and intimidation. For nearly a year, from early 2004 to late 2004, she lived in constant fear. Outside, she was threatened by those responsible, and at home, she continued to face violence from her father. She felt trapped, unable to tell anyone, fearing judgment, humiliation, and further harm. Every day was a new ordeal, every night a new fear. But for how long? Would anyone help her? Finally, Choi's aunt noticed her strange behavior and mood swings and persuaded her. Then Choi told her everything horrific. The aunt immediately told Choi's mother, who called the Ulsan Namdong police station at 8 p.m. on November 25, 2004. The police promised to keep Choi's identity confidential, and a detective confirmed this. But was it right to trust the police? This is where the system's complete failure began. The police initially launched a secret investigation. But on December 6, 12 days after the report, they arrested 44 suspects and leaked it to the media. The arrests were made in computer rooms and libraries in Ulsan, Miryang, and Chang'an, among others. 35 of them were high school students from Miryang. During the investigation, Choi's real name, age, and area were leaked and made public in a press release. The police investigation was conducted in Meiji. Choi was promised female officers would conduct the interview, but that didn't happen. Male officers conducted the interview and asked horrific questions. During the investigation, the victim was subjected to deeply insensitive and inappropriate questioning. Some officials implied blame, asking disturbing and accusatory questions like "Didn't you enjoy it?" That only added to her trauma. At one point, an officer even suggested that she had brought shame to the community. What made the situation even more painful was that she was repeatedly made to face the accused. She had to recall every detail of what had happened, again and again, while those responsible denied everything. Each session left her emotionally shattered. In total, 5 victims, including her, were called in multiple times. Each time, they were forced to give statements that lasted for several exhausting hours. Throughout this process, they were also intimidated by the accused and their families, who issued threats and tried to pressure them into silence. The conduct of some investigators raised serious concerns. Reports later revealed that certain officers had behaved unprofessionally, even making light of the situation in inappropriate settings. When this information reached the victim's family, it sparked widespread anger. Public outrage quickly grew. Women's rights groups and citizens began protesting, demanding accountability and justice. In response, the authorities removed the original investigation team and assigned a new team, including female officers. A special unit was also formed to handle the case. However, questions remained. Some reports suggested that the case may have been handled poorly for personal or professional gain. This raised a troubling concern. Were these changes enough to bring justice, or would the victims continue to suffer? By this point, the situation had become so overwhelming that she and her sister could no longer remain in their hometown. In January 2005, she and her sister relocated to Seoul with their mother. She was admitted to a hospital for treatment, as her condition had deteriorated severely, both physically and emotionally. Medical professionals noted that prolonged neglect and abuse had left deep scars, leading to serious psychological struggles, including severe depression. During her treatment, she often broke down and expressed feelings of hopelessness. After about a month, she was discharged, but her struggles did not end there. She continued to experience emotional instability and, at times, showed signs of self-harm risk. At one point, she even threatened to harm herself near a subway station, prompting her family to admit her to a secure psychiatric facility for her safety. While she was undergoing treatment, her father and other relatives appeared to show concern. However, behind the scenes, they accepted money from the families of those accused and pressured her into agreeing to a financial settlement. Under this pressure, she signed an agreement worth 50 million won, along with a petition requesting leniency for the perpetrators. Most of the money never reached her. Her father used a portion for household expenses and distributed the rest among relatives, leaving her and her sister with nothing. This agreement ultimately contributed to lighter consequences for those responsible. Later, she deeply regretted this decision. With support from a sexual violence counseling center, custody arrangements were changed, and she was placed under her mother's care. The two sisters began living with their mother in a small rented place in Seoul, relying on welfare to survive. Meanwhile, their brother remained in Ulsan with their father. Soon after, another tragedy struck. Their father passed away due to complications related to alcoholism. Seeking accountability, she filed a lawsuit against the state, citing serious failures in the police investigation. On March 18, 2007, the Seoul High Court ruled in her favor, awarding compensation. 30 million won to her, 10 million won to her sister, and 10 million won to their mother. This decision was later upheld by the Supreme Court on June 16, 2008. But no amount of money could restore what had been taken from her. Her education was deeply affected. She was unable to complete high school. In April 2005, she attempted to enroll in schools, but faced repeated rejection. Eventually, with the help of a lawyer, she was admitted to a public school in Seoul. However, the harassment and pressure continued, forcing her to transfer schools multiple times, nearly 10 in total. At one point, a parent of one of the accused confronted her and pressured her into signing a petition. Terrified, she hid in a bathroom as tensions escalated. The situation became chaotic, and she was ultimately forced to leave the school once again. Her lawyer later remarked that she had very few options left. She spent much of her time in internet cafes and took on part-time jobs, but her life remained unstable. The emotional toll also affected her physically, and maintaining steady work became difficult. Out of 44 individuals accused in the case, only 10 were formally charged. Of the remaining, many cases were handled in juvenile court. Several were cleared due to settlements or lack of formal complaints, while one was already involved in another case. In April 2005, the Ulsan court placed 10 individuals in juvenile detention. However, the overall outcome left many questioning whether true justice had been served. None of the accused ended up with lasting criminal records. Prosecutors argued that there was insufficient evidence and claimed the severity of the crimes did not justify harsher punishment. The court also took the young age of those involved into account, reducing sentences to avoid affecting their future education and careers. In the end, only a few were sent to detention. This raises a difficult question: was this justice or a failure of the system?